Close your eyes. Let your mind drift. Time feels like a river, flowing steadily forward, carrying you with it. But what if that river isn't moving at all? What if the past, the present, and the future are already written, frozen in place like an unchanging sculpture? Or worse, what if time itself is nothing more than an illusion, a trick played by your mind to make sense of something far more complex than you could ever comprehend? Tonight, we are diving deep into the most haunting theories about time and reality, ideas so strange, so unsettling, that they have left even the greatest minds in history questioning everything they once believed to be true. Some of these theories suggest that the world you know, the memories you hold, and the choices you make are nothing more than shadows on the wall of a much larger, more incomprehensible truth. Others whisper of infinite universes, where every possibility plays out in parallel, each version of you following a different path. But don't worry, you don't need to solve these mysteries, just let them unfold around you, like waves lapping at the shore. Let the weight of reality slip away as you sink into a deeper state of relaxation. Each theory we explore tonight will be like a quiet dream, pulling you further and further from the rigid structure of the world you think you know. So take a deep breath. Let go of the day behind you, and allow yourself to wander into the most haunting theories about time and reality. The Eternalism Theory. Time is already written. Time feels like a river, endlessly flowing forward, pulling us along with it. We wake up, move through our days, and watch the past fade behind us while the future unfolds ahead. But what if this movement is an illusion? What if time does not truly flow at all? This is the unsettling idea behind eternalism. A theory that suggests time is not a sequence of fleeting moments, but a vast, unchanging structure where every event, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously. You are not traveling through time. You are simply experiencing a sliver of something far larger, something already written. The version of you listening to this exists at the same time as the child you once were and the older version of yourself that you have yet to meet. Every moment you have ever lived, and will ever live, is already there, unchanging, waiting for you to arrive. Imagine holding a book in your hands. To you, the story unfolds one page at a time, and it feels as though the events are happening in order. But in reality, the entire story already exists within the book, every chapter laid out from beginning to end. You are simply reading it line by line. Now imagine that your life is just like that book. You are experiencing it moment by moment, but every part of it already exists. Your past, your future, everything you will ever say, do, or feel, captured within the pages. To you, time appears to move, but from a higher perspective, it is motionless, complete. This theory challenges one of our deepest beliefs, free will. If time is already structured, then do you truly make choices, or are you simply following a script that was always meant to be? The decisions you made yesterday, the ones you will make tomorrow, were they ever truly yours? Or were they set in place long before you ever had the chance to consider them? If eternalism is true, then every moment of your life is like a scene in a film reel, already recorded, already fixed in place, playing out exactly as it must. The unsettling part is that this theory is not just a thought experiment, it is supported by physics. Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time does not pass the same way for everyone. A person moving through space at a different speed experiences time differently than someone standing still. This means that time is not a universal force pulling us forward, but rather something relative, something that does not behave the way we assume it does. If time is flexible, if it does not truly move in the way we perceive, then perhaps our sense of time is nothing more than a trick played by our minds to make sense of something far stranger. It is an eerie thought. Right now, somewhere in the structure of time, you are still experiencing your first day of school, still celebrating a birthday that has long passed, still living out a moment of joy or sorrow that you have already forgotten. You do not feel it because your awareness is focused on the present. But the past is not gone. It is still there. And so is the future, waiting for you to arrive. If you could step outside of time, if you could look at reality from a higher perspective, you would see it all at once, every moment of your life, side by side, fixed in place like an unchangeable tapestry. Some scientists and philosophers believe that if eternalism is true, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every experience, every conversation, every fleeting second of happiness still exists, frozen within the vast and unchanging structure of time. The people you have lost, the moments you wish you could relive, they are all still there, just out of reach. And if they are still there, do they ever truly disappear? Perhaps time does not erase, it simply hides, placing events just beyond the veil of the present, always there, but unreachable. But there is another side to this theory, a side that is even more unsettling. If time is already written, if every moment is fixed in place, then does this mean the future is already decided? Are you simply playing out a story that has already been completed? And if so, does this mean you are powerless to change it? If eternalism is true, then you are not writing your own fate, you are simply experiencing it. Your choices, your emotions, your sense of control may all be illusions designed to keep you from realizing the truth, that everything you will ever do has already been done. Yet, there is a strange comfort in this idea as well. If time is unchanging, then there is no true loss. The best moments of your life still exist, even if you cannot return to them. The people you love, the memories you cherish, are not erased. They are simply in a different part of the timeline, still there, still real. And perhaps, just as you long for the past, there's a version of you in the future, looking back at this very moment, wishing they could return to it. So as you listen, as you drift deeper into thought, consider this. If time does not truly move, then this moment will always exist. You will always be here, in this exact second, feeling what you feel now, thinking these very thoughts. It may pass for you, but from the perspective of the universe, it never truly fades. Perhaps there is no rushing toward the future, no leaving the past behind. Perhaps we are all simply standing in place, watching the illusion of time unfold around us. And if that is true, then maybe the past is not something lost. Maybe the future is not something unknown. Maybe time is not a journey, but a prison, holding us in place, showing us one moment at a time. And if you could step beyond it, if you could see the full picture, you might realize that you have already reached the end, that you have already lived it all. But here, in this moment, you cannot see it. You can only move forward, one step at a time, in a world that has already been written. The simulation hypothesis. Are we living in a digital illusion? There is a strange stillness in the air when you stop to question reality, not in the way you usually do, passing thoughts about the meaning of life or the nature of the universe, but in a much deeper, more unsettling way, a way that makes you doubt the very fabric of existence itself. What if everything you know, everything you have ever seen, felt, or experienced is nothing more than an illusion? What if reality, as solid and undeniable as it seems, is nothing but a complex simulation, a digital mirage so advanced that even your thoughts, your emotions, and your very sense of self are nothing more than lines of code running on an unfathomable machine? If that is true, then what does it mean to be real? What does it mean to exist? And if reality is a simulation, then who or what is running it? You have felt it before, haven't you? That eerie sensation that something about the world isn't quite right. Maybe it was a moment of déjà vu, a feeling so strong it seemed like time itself had folded over. Or perhaps it was a bizarre coincidence, something so unlikely that it felt as though the universe had scripted it just for you. There are times when reality feels unnatural, as if the world around you is a stage, the people in it following unseen cues, playing roles they do not even realize they have been assigned. These moments pass quickly, dismissed as tricks of the mind. But what if they are not tricks at all? What if they are glimpses behind the curtain, tiny cracks in the illusion, fleeting hints that the world you live in is not what it seems? The idea of a simulated universe is not just science fiction. Some of the world's greatest thinkers, physicists, philosophers, and computer scientists have seriously considered the possibility that we are living in a programmed reality. They argue that if technology continues to advance at the rate it is now, then at some point, future civilizations will develop computers so powerful that they can create fully immersive, self-contained worlds. Worlds indistinguishable from reality. And if that is true, then what are the chances that we just happen to be in the one real world, rather than one of the countless simulated ones? The answer is unsettling. the odds suggest we are far more likely to be inside a simulation than outside of one. Consider the rapid evolution of virtual reality. In just a few decades, we have gone from simple pixelated games to hyper-realistic digital worlds. Imagine what will be possible in 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years. If a civilization could create a simulation detailed enough to contain conscious beings, then those beings, completely unaware of their artificial nature, would live their lives believing their world was real. And if that is possible, then how do you know you are not one of them? How do you know that your thoughts, your emotions, and your very sense of self are not the result of lines of code meticulously programmed to create the illusion of free will? But there is a deeper, more disturbing question buried within this theory. What if you are the only real consciousness here? If this is a simulation, then the people around you, your friends, your family, even strangers on the street, may not be real at all. They may be highly sophisticated programs designed to interact with you in ways that make the world feel real. You could be the central figure in this simulation, the only conscious being in an artificial world filled with scripted characters, responding to you, shaping your reality, keeping you from ever realizing the truth. It would be impossible to tell. After all, the programs would be designed to act just like real people, to laugh, to cry, to dream, to suffer. But in the end, they may be nothing more than carefully crafted illusions, existing only as long as you perceive them. Theoretical physicists have pointed out strange patterns in the laws of the universe that seem eerily similar to computer code. The fundamental forces that govern reality, the speed of light, the structure of atoms, the mathematical rules that shape the cosmos, all appear suspiciously organized, as if someone designed them. Some scientists have even suggested that space itself may be pixelated, broken down into tiny, discrete units, much like the pixels on a screen. If that is true, then reality may not be continuous and smooth as we perceive it, but rather composed of tiny bits of information, like data in a simulation. And if we are in a simulation, then what are its rules? Could there be glitches in the system, moments when reality itself breaks down? Some people believe that strange phenomena, such as déjà vu, missing time, or unexplained memories, are evidence of these glitches. That somewhere, deep in the hidden code of our world, errors sometimes occur, revealing tiny fragments of the truth. Could your memories of events that never happened be the result of a system reset? Could the Mandela effect, the phenomenon where large groups of people remember things differently from recorded history, be evidence of changes in the simulation's programming? If this is a simulation, then who created it? Are we part of an experiment, observed by beings beyond our comprehension? Are we the digital creations of some advanced civilization, living out our lives unaware that we are mere constructs in an artificial world? And if we are in a simulation, does it have an end? Will there come a moment when the system is shut down, when reality itself vanishes, leaving nothing behind? What happens then? Do we wake up in another world, realizing that everything we ever knew was a dream? Or do we simply cease to exist, our consciousness nothing more than data deleted from an unseen machine? Perhaps you will never know. Perhaps the system is designed to keep you from asking these questions for too long, gently nudging your thoughts back to the familiar, the comfortable, the known. But sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and your mind is free to wander, you may feel it again, that unsettling sensation that something is not quite right, the quiet whisper of doubt, the eerie suspicion that reality is not as real as it seems. And in that moment, as you drift between wakefulness and sleep, you might wonder, if this is a simulation, then what happens when I close my eyes? The block universe theory. Everything that will happen has already happened. There is something profoundly unsettling about time. We live our lives under the illusion that it flows like a river, always moving forward, carrying us from the past into the future. But what if time is not a flowing river at all? What if time is something fixed, something unchanging, something that already exists in its entirety? What if the past, the present, and the future are not separate moments at all, but rather different slices of the same eternal structure? This is the essence of the block universe theory. The idea that time does not move, that it does not change, and that everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will happen has already been written into the fabric of reality. Think about your life, not as a series of fleeting moments, but as a frozen, unchanging structure. Imagine that your birth, your childhood, every decision you have ever made, and every moment still to come already exists, fixed in place like a sculpture carved out of time itself. Right now, as you listen to this, there is another version of you in the past, experiencing a moment that you can no longer reach. And there is a future version of you, living out an experience that you have yet to perceive. But these versions of you are not possibilities, not maybes, not yet to be determined outcomes. They exist just as surely as this moment exists. You just can't see them yet. The block universe theory suggests that time is an illusion, that we experience the present simply because our consciousness is trapped in a single frame of this eternal structure. You do not move through time. Instead, your awareness simply shifts from one moment to another, like a needle moving along a record. But the record itself, the entire past, present, and future, already exists, unchanging, waiting to be played. This means that your future is not something you create. It is something that already is. Every thought you will ever have, every action you will ever take, every word you will ever speak, is already etched into the vast, unalterable structure of time. It's a strange and haunting thought. If the future is already set in stone, does that mean you have no free will? Does it mean that every choice you make is merely an illusion, that you are simply playing out a script already written? Perhaps. But then again, the idea of free will may have always been an illusion. After all, when you make a decision, do you truly choose? Or are you simply following a chain of events that led you to that decision, a chain that was always going to happen in that exact way? If you could somehow step outside of time and look at your entire life all at once, would you see yourself making those same choices? Over and over again, in the exact same way, trapped in an endless loop that was never truly yours to control. And yet, there is something oddly comforting about this idea. If your life is already written, then there is no reason to fear the unknown. The path ahead is not something you need to carve out for yourself. It is something that already exists, waiting for you to experience it. You cannot get lost. You cannot make a mistake. No matter what you do, you are simply following the path that was always meant to be. Every triumph, every failure, every moment of joy and sorrow, it all belongs to you, unchangeable, eternal. But what about death? If time is fixed, if the past and future are equally real, then does that mean death is not the end? If there is a version of you that always exists in the past, living out their experiences again and again, then are you ever truly gone? Perhaps your consciousness is like a light flickering through the frames of a film, forever jumping from moment to moment, never disappearing, never ceasing to be. If the block universe theory is true, then right now, somewhere in time, you are still a child, still playing, still dreaming, and somewhere else, you are old, reflecting on a life that was always meant to be. And perhaps, somewhere beyond even that, you are stepping into the unknown, discovering that time itself was never what you thought it was. Time does not move, it does not change. It simply is. And so are you. Eternalism. The past, present, and future exist all at once. If time is a river, then you are merely a traveler, carried along its currents, believing you have control when, in truth, you are simply moving where the river allows. But what if the river is not moving at all? What if the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, and you are simply experiencing them one by one, like flipping through the pages of a book that has already been written? This is the unsettling idea behind eternalism, the theory that the past is not gone, the future is not yet to be determined, and that everything that will ever happen has already happened. Right now, as you listen to this, the universe has already played out every event, every outcome, every moment in history, and every moment that is still to come. Your future self is not something waiting to be created. It already exists, just out of reach, like a shadow waiting to be stepped into. And yet, as strange as it sounds, this concept is not mere speculation. It is deeply tied to the fabric of modern physics. Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time is not an absolute flowing force, but a dimension, like space itself. In the same way that the city you grew up in still exists, even if you are no longer there, your past still exists, even if you can no longer reach it. From a higher dimensional perspective, your birth, your childhood, your present, and even your future all exist at once. If you could step outside of time, you would see your entire life stretched out like a long road, every step already in place, waiting to be traveled. But if that's true, what does that mean for choice? If the future already exists, then is free will nothing more than an illusion? At first, this idea may feel cold, even suffocating. If the future already exists, then does that mean you are nothing more than a passenger, playing out a life you have no power to change? Every decision you make, every word you speak, every breath you take, is it all predetermined? Are you simply moving through a script, believing you are choosing, when in reality, every choice you make was always the only choice you could have made? If you could somehow step outside of time, if you could look at your entire existence from a higher perspective, you would see every moment of your life frozen in place, like frames in a film reel, unchanging, unalterable. Your first cry, your first steps, your greatest achievements, your deepest regrets, they all exist at once, forming an unbreakable chain from the beginning of your life to its inevitable end. But perhaps this idea is not as limiting as it seems. If eternalism is true, then it means you are not confined to a single moment. Right now, somewhere in time, you are still a child, experiencing the world with wonder and innocence. Somewhere else, you are already an old man, looking back at a life that feels like it passed in an instant. Somewhere you are experiencing your happiest day, and somewhere you are facing your greatest sorrow. None of these moments are lost. They still exist, untouched, waiting to be revisited. Every person you have ever met, every conversation you have ever had, every experience you have ever lived through, it is all still there, as real now as it was when it happened. And if this is true, then what does it mean for death? If time is not something that flows, if the future is not something that is being written but rather something that has always existed, then what happens when your consciousness reaches its end? Do you simply stop? Or does your awareness, like a needle on a record, jump back to an earlier point in time, replaying your life over and over again? Perhaps you are already reliving this moment, countless times before and countless times to come, unaware that you have traveled this path before. Maybe this is why life sometimes feels eerily familiar, why you get that strange sensation that you have been here before, said these words before, lived this exact experience before. Maybe you have, maybe you always will. There is a strange peace in this idea. If every moment exists forever, then nothing is ever truly lost. The people you love, the moments you cherish, the life you have built, they do not disappear. They are always there, waiting, like old photographs frozen in time, untouched by the passage of days. You may move forward, but the past is still there, still real, still existing somewhere beyond your reach. And perhaps when the time comes, you will find yourself moving not forward, but backward, drifting gently into the moments you thought were gone, feeling them once again as if they had never left. If you have ever dreamed of a moment from your past, have you ever wondered whether it was truly a memory, or if, just for a fleeting second, your mind had drifted back into that moment as it still exists? What if dreams are not just stories your mind creates, but glimpses, fragments of a reality still present, but beyond your reach? If time is not flowing, but simply is, then perhaps there is a version of you still lost in childhood dreams, still sitting beneath the same stars you gazed at years ago, still wondering what the future holds, never realizing that future is already written. Eternalism suggests that nothing is ever truly over, that every moment is eternal, that your existence is not something fleeting, but something carved into the fabric of reality itself. You may not be able to change the future, but you also never truly leave the past. You are always here, always existing, always present in some version of time that has never ceased to be. Perhaps you have already lived this life. Perhaps you will live it again and again and again. And if that is true, then perhaps this moment, right now, as you listen to these words, has already happened before. Maybe you have already heard them. Maybe you have already fallen asleep to this exact thought countless times. Block universe theory. The illusion of the present. Imagine walking through a long hallway filled with doors. Behind each door is a moment in time, your past, your future, everything that has ever happened and everything that ever will. You can only move forward, opening one door at a time, experiencing the present as though it's the only reality. But what if the hallway itself, the entire structure, is already built from beginning to end, with every door firmly in place? This is the unsettling vision of the block universe theory, which suggests that time is not something that moves forward, but something already laid out in its entirety, a vast, unchanging structure where every event is frozen in place, past, present, and future alike. To understand this theory, imagine time as a book. You experience it one page at a time, reading it line by line, moment by moment. But the book itself, every page, every chapter, the beginning and the end, already exists. You may not have reached the last chapter yet, but it is already there, written and waiting, unchangeable. Your birth, your childhood, your most treasured memories, and even your final moments, each one is already set in stone, waiting to be experienced. The only reason you feel like the present is real, like you are moving through time, is because your mind is locked into experiencing it 1 second at a time. This idea is deeply connected to Einstein's theory of relativity, which suggests that time is not an absolute, universal force, but a dimension, just like height, width, and depth. From a higher perspective, if you could somehow step outside of time, you would see your entire life stretched out in its full form, like a sculpture with every detail already carved into it. You would see yourself as a child, as you are now, and as an old man, all existing at once, just in different parts of the timeline. The past is not gone. The future is not unwritten. They are both just out of reach. But if the future already exists, if the past is still real, what does that mean for free will? If the book of your life has already been written, does it mean you are simply a character following a script with no ability to change your own story? Every choice you make, every decision, every moment where you hesitate between two options, was there ever really a choice, or were you always going to pick the same path, destined to follow a road that was never yours to alter? At first, this idea may feel unsettling. You may wonder if your sense of self, your ability to make decisions, is just an illusion. But what if, instead of a prison, this theory offers a kind of reassurance? If time is already laid out in full, if every experience exists eternally, then nothing is ever truly lost. The people you have loved, the moments you have cherished, the versions of yourself that you have left behind, they are all still there, unchanging, untouched by the passing of time. Somewhere, in the vast, frozen structure of reality, you are still laughing with your childhood friends, still standing in the moments that once brought you joy, still living through the times you thought were gone forever. And what about the future? If it already exists, then is death truly an end? If time is simply a structure, and not something that moves forward, then when you reach your final moment, does your consciousness simply stop? Or does it loop back, returning to an earlier point in the timeline? If the universe is truly a block, then perhaps you have already lived this life before. Perhaps you will live it again, infinitely, reliving the same memories, feeling the same emotions, making the same choices over and over without ever realizing it. Perhaps this moment, right now, as you listen to these words, has happened before, and it will happen again. The next time you look at an old photograph, the next time you close your eyes and remember a moment so vividly that it feels like you are there again, consider the possibility that you are not just remembering. Perhaps, somewhere in the fabric of time, that moment is still happening. You are still living it, still feeling it, still existing in a version of reality where that experience has never faded. Perhaps memory is not just a trick of the brain, but a window into something that is still there, forever unchanging, waiting for you to return. And if that is true, then maybe, just maybe, you have already fallen asleep to this thought before. Maybe this very moment has repeated countless times and will continue to repeat forever. Eternalism, the past, present, and future exist at once. Imagine time as a great cosmic tapestry, every thread woven in perfect precision, stretching endlessly in all directions. You are a single point in this vast design, moving through its intricate patterns, experiencing life as a linear journey, one moment following the next like footsteps on an unbroken path. But what if this journey is an illusion? What if every moment that has ever existed and every moment that ever will is already there, fully formed, unchanging, eternal? This is the idea of eternalism, a haunting theory that suggests the past has not disappeared, the future is not waiting to be written, and the present is not the only reality, because all of time exists simultaneously, in a single, unshifting block. You may feel like you are moving forward, like time is something that flows, pushing you from yesterday into tomorrow. But what if the sensation of movement is only an illusion created by your mind? What if you are not traveling through time, but merely experiencing one frozen frame at a time, like a needle tracing the grooves of a record? Imagine a film reel. Each frame is already printed, from the first scene to the last. When you watch the movie, it appears as if things are changing, as if characters are making choices and events are unfolding. But in reality, every moment of the film already exists, locked in place, never altering, never truly shifting from one scene to the next. You may feel like time is passing, but what if, in reality, you are merely witnessing one pre-existing moment at a time, never truly leaving the past behind, never truly stepping into an unknown future? If eternalism is true, then the version of you who laughed as a child, the version of you who will one day take their final breath, they are both still there, frozen in their own eternal present, unaware of the future, untouched by the past. Right now, as you sit in this moment, there are infinite versions of you existing in every moment of your life, unaware of each other, trapped in their own fixed place within the timeline. Somewhere, the version of you who experienced heartbreak is still feeling that pain. Somewhere else, a younger version of you is still opening their eyes for the first time, still learning how to walk, still experiencing the first sparks of consciousness. And in another place, a future version of you already knows how this story ends. This theory is terrifying in its implications. It means that your past is never truly lost. It still exists, just beyond your reach. It means your future is not something you create. It has already happened, already solidified, already unchangeable. It means that free will, choice, and change are mere illusions, figments of perception designed to make us feel like we have control, when in reality, we are simply experiencing one moment after another, like a passenger on a train with no ability to alter its course. But there is a strange comfort in this idea as well. If every moment is eternal, then nothing has ever truly gone. The people you have lost, the places you have left behind, the happiest and saddest moments of your life, they all still exist, just outside of your perception. Somewhere, in the grand tapestry of time, you are still there, still laughing with those who are no longer with you, still existing in every version of yourself that has ever been. And perhaps in a way, that means we are all immortal. And what if death is not truly an ending? If time is not something we move through, but something that simply exists, then your final moment does not erase you. It is simply one more frozen frame in the film reel of reality. Always there, always waiting, never fading into nothingness. Maybe you are already there, experiencing it, just as you are experiencing this moment now. Maybe, when you finally reach that last scene, you will not vanish. You will simply stop perceiving time as a journey, and instead become aware of the eternal nature of existence itself. If that is true, then perhaps you have never truly lost anything. Maybe every love, every moment, every version of yourself is still there, untouched, unbroken, eternal. And maybe, as you drift into sleep, you are simply shifting to another frame, another frozen moment in the endless, unchanging structure of time. The time dilation effect, a lifetime in a moment. Imagine standing at the edge of a black hole, staring into an abyss so dark that light itself cannot escape. The event horizon, the point of no return, looms before you like an invisible wall. If someone were watching you from a safe distance, they would see something strange. You would begin to slow down, your movements stretching, your final moments dragging out into eternity. From their perspective, you would never quite fall in. You would hover there, frozen in time, forever caught on the edge of oblivion. But to you, time would feel normal, unbroken, moving forward just as it always has. This is the eerie reality of time dilation, a phenomenon that proves time does not flow the same for everyone, that it bends and stretches, shifting depending on speed and gravity. This idea comes from Einstein's theory of relativity, which shattered our traditional understanding of time. We often think of time as a constant, a universal clock ticking at the same rate for all of us. But in reality, time is elastic, shaped by the forces acting upon it. If you travel fast enough, near the speed of light, time slows down for you compared to those left behind. If you find yourself in the grip of extreme gravity, like near a black hole, time moves at an agonizing crawl. This means that someone could experience minutes while another person, elsewhere, experiences years. What feels like a second to one might be a century to another. Consider the famous twin paradox. One twin stays on Earth, while the other boards a spaceship and travels at near light speed to a distant star. When the traveling twin returns, they have barely aged, while the twin on Earth has grown old. For one, only a handful of years have passed. For the other, an entire lifetime has slipped away. It is not that time moved faster or slower, it is that time itself is relative, personal, bound to the perspective of the observer. Now, imagine the implications of this in everyday life. You go through your day assuming time is flowing steadily. But what if it's not? What if, at microscopic levels, time is constantly stretching and contracting, fluctuating in ways too small for you to perceive? What if, when you experience moments of extreme focus, time actually slows down because your brain is processing information at a different rate? And what if, in deep sleep, you slip into a state where time behaves differently, where dreams feel like hours but unfold in minutes? And then, there is death. What if the moment of death lasts forever? Some theorists speculate that, as the brain shuts down, time dilation could create an illusion of infinite experience. Imagine if, in your last second of life, time stretches so far that it feels like eternity. Could this explain why people with near-death experiences claim to see their entire lives flash before their eyes? Could this be the reason so many cultures have myths about the afterlife? Not because we actually move on to another realm, but because our final moment stretches into infinity? If time is not a steady river but an unpredictable ocean, then reality is far stranger than we ever imagined. Perhaps every moment we live is merely a fragment of a much greater, more complex reality, a glimpse of something vast and unknowable. Perhaps you have already lived this moment, and will live it again and again, forever caught in the cycles of time, reliving the same experiences without ever realizing it. Imagine if time is not a straight line, but a loop, folding in on itself like an endless spiral. What if you have already reached the end, only to start again, trapped in a cycle you cannot escape? Maybe déjà vu, the eerie feeling of having experienced something before, is not just a trick of the mind. Maybe it is a glitch in time, a crack in the illusion that allows you to momentarily glimpse the truth, that you are moving in circles, repeating the same story over and over. And what if sleep is a doorway into a place where time has no meaning? What if, when you close your eyes, you are not simply resting, but slipping into another form of existence, outside the boundaries of linear time? Perhaps in the stillness of night, you are moving through a space where the past, present, and future are all one, where you exist in every version of yourself at once. Maybe, just maybe, time is nothing more than a fragile illusion, a fleeting dream from which we have yet to wake. Eternalism, the block universe theory. Close your eyes. Let the weight of the day settle into the depths of your mind, dissolving into the quiet hum of the night. Now imagine time, not as a flowing river, not as a sequence of moments slipping through your fingers, but as something entirely different. What if time is not moving at all? What if every moment, your first breath, your final sigh, every heartbeat in between, already exists, permanently frozen in the fabric of reality? You are not traveling through time. You are simply experiencing each moment, one by one, like reading a sentence in an endless book, oblivious to the fact that the whole story has already been written. This is the haunting idea behind eternalism, or the block universe theory, the notion that past, present, and future are not separate, but exist simultaneously, eternally. If you could step outside of time, outside of your limited perception, you would see your entire life stretched out before you. Every choice, every thought, every emotion, preserved like a painting, unchanging, immutable. You have already taken your first steps. You have already spoken your last words. You are simply playing out a reality that is already set in stone. If this is true, then time is not something you pass through. It is something you are trapped inside. Every moment you have ever lived is still there, still happening, playing out endlessly in some corner of existence. The first time you fell in love? Still happening. The moment you faced your greatest fear? Still happening. The day you die? Already written, already real, and you are powerless to change it. It is an unsettling thought, isn't it? The idea that free will might be nothing more than an illusion, that every decision you make is not truly a decision, but a preordained event playing out exactly as it must. You feel like you're making choices, but in reality, those choices have already been made. If you decide to stand up right now, that moment has already existed. If you decide to stay still, that has already existed too. The universe is not waiting for you to act. It has already accounted for every move you will ever make. Even Einstein hinted at this when he wrote, "The distinction between past, present, and future is merely an illusion, albeit a stubborn one." He saw time as a dimension, just like space. You do not move through space. Space simply exists, and you exist within it. Time in the same way does not move. It simply is. You are not walking through time. You are standing still, trapped in a fixed structure, unaware of the truth. But if every moment is set, then what happens when you sleep? Why do dreams feel so strange, so detached from time? What if when you sleep, you are not simply resting, but glimpsing other parts of your timeline, experiencing moments outside of your conscious awareness? What if, in deep sleep, you touch fragments of your past and future, jumping through time in ways your waking mind cannot comprehend? Maybe déjà vu, the eerie feeling of having lived a moment before, is not a glitch, but a brief slip in perception, a crack in the illusion that lets you see beyond the veil. And if the past still exists, does that mean we never truly lose the people we love? If time is a block, then your childhood self is still there. Your parents are still there. Your happiest moments are still alive somewhere in the structure of reality. When someone dies, their presence does not vanish. It is simply locked in another part of the timeline, forever unchanged. The version of you that is listening to these words will always be listening, frozen in this moment. The version of you that is sleeping will always be sleeping. And the version of you that has already left this world is still existing somewhere in the great expanse of time. Perhaps this is why the fear of death lingers so deeply within us, not because we are afraid of the unknown, but because some part of us knows the truth, that we have already died, that we are simply playing out a story that has already reached its conclusion. If the block universe is real, then nothing ever truly begins and nothing ever truly ends. Perhaps the reason you fear time slipping away is because, deep down, you already know it never actually does. You are eternal. Every version of you, every thought, every emotion is woven into the structure of time, unchangeable, unbroken. You are living the same life over and over, locked in the cycle of existence. And maybe, just maybe, you have already heard these words before. Maybe you have already lived this moment in another version of yourself, in another repetition of time. Maybe, in some distant part of reality, you are remembering the future, the phantom universe. Is time an illusion? Close your eyes and let yourself drift. Feel the weight of time dissolve like sand slipping through your fingers, leaving only the quiet hum of your thoughts. You have lived in time for as long as you can remember, watching the past fade behind you, feeling the present unfold, waiting for the future to arrive. But what if I told you that time isn't real? What if everything you know about time is nothing more than a trick of the mind, a grand illusion woven into the fabric of your consciousness? You see, we have been conditioned to think of time as something absolute, something that flows forward in a straight, unwavering line. We wake up, we go through the motions of the day, we watch the sun rise and set, marking the passage of time as though it were a river carrying us from one moment to the next. But what if that river is an illusion? What if time is not flowing at all, but is instead frozen, unchanging, an eternal stillness we are simply experiencing in a carefully constructed sequence? This is the question at the heart of one of the most haunting theories about time and reality. The idea that time itself does not exist, that everything, the ticking clock, the changing seasons, the years passing by, is merely a construct, a byproduct of the way our brains process reality. Imagine a world where time is not a river, not a force, not a dimension, but an illusion. a phantom of perception. What if, instead of moving through time, we are simply experiencing individual moments that have always existed, stacked together like pages in a book? If you hold a book in your hands, you can flip through its pages, reading the story in sequence. But the pages themselves are not moving. The words on page 10 do not disappear when you turn to page 11. They are all there, existing at once. The only thing that changes is where you focus your attention. What if time is the same? What if every moment of your life, every experience, every breath, every heartbeat already exists, waiting for you to perceive it? Think about a film reel. If you hold it in your hands, you can see every frame, frozen in place, existing at once. But when you play the film, the illusion of movement is created. You see a story unfolding, moment by moment, as if time is flowing forward. But nothing is truly moving. Every frame was always there, unchanging, waiting to be seen. Now imagine that reality itself works the same way, that every moment of your life from birth to death is already there, existing all at once. You are simply experiencing it in sequence, as if watching a movie that has already been filmed. This would mean that your past is not behind you, your future is not ahead of you. Every version of yourself exists simultaneously, scattered across a timeless reality. The child you once were, the elder you will become, they are all still there, existing in their own frozen slivers of reality. You are simply unaware of them because your consciousness is confined to a single point in that vast, unchanging existence. Some physicists believe that time is nothing more than a measurement, a tool we use to make sense of change. But if time is an illusion, then what is causing the sensation of movement, of progression, of life unfolding? Why do we feel the past slipping away, the future rushing toward us? Perhaps the answer is memory. Your mind is constantly updating its awareness, holding on to fragments of past moments, stitching them together into a seamless experience. But what if memory is the only reason you believe in time at all? If you had no memory, if your brain did not store previous moments, would time still feel like it was moving? Or would you simply exist, eternally present, with no concept of past or future? The unsettling truth is that we experience time not because it flows, but because we remember. And that raises a disturbing question. If we could erase memory, would we also erase time itself? Now think about dreams. When you dream, time becomes strange. A single dream can feel like it lasts hours, days, even years. Yet in reality, it takes place in mere minutes. Your mind bends time effortlessly, stretching and compressing it without you even noticing. If time can be manipulated so easily within your own consciousness, how can you be sure that it is real at all? What if waking life is no different? What if time only exists because your mind insists on it? What if you are trapped inside a carefully constructed illusion where your brain feeds you the experience of time to create order out of chaos? Imagine for a moment that you could step outside of time and look at your entire life from a distance. Instead of a flowing sequence, you would see every moment of your existence, frozen and complete. You would see yourself as a child, as an adult, as an old man, all existing at once, like frames in a film reel. You would realize that your movement through time is nothing more than an illusion, a journey your consciousness is taking through a reality that has already been written. The unsettling part is that this theory is not just a thought experiment, it is supported by physics. Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that time does not pass the same way for everyone. A person moving through space at a different speed experiences time differently than someone standing still. This means that time is not a universal force pulling us forward, but rather something relative, something that does not behave the way we assume it does. If time is flexible, if it does not truly move in the way we perceive, then perhaps our sense of time is nothing more than a trick played by our minds to make sense of something far stranger. It is an eerie thought. Right now, somewhere in the structure of time, you are still experiencing your first day of school, still celebrating a birthday that has long passed, still living out a moment of joy or sorrow that you have already forgotten. You do not feel it because your awareness is focused on the present. But the past is not gone. It is still there. And so is the future, waiting for you to arrive. If you could step outside of time, if you could look at reality from a higher perspective, you would see it all at once, every moment of your life, side by side, fixed in place like an unchangeable tapestry. Some scientists and philosophers believe that if eternalism is true, then nothing is ever truly lost. Every experience, every conversation, every fleeting second of happiness still exists, frozen within the vast and unchanging structure of time. The people you have lost, the moments you wish you could relive, they are all still there, just out of reach. And if they are still there, do they ever truly disappear? Perhaps time does not erase, it simply hides, placing events just beyond the veil of the present, always there, but unreachable. But there is another side to this theory, a side that is even more unsettling. If time is already written, if every moment is fixed in place, then does this mean the future is already decided? Are you simply playing out a story that has already been completed? And if so, does this mean you are powerless to change it? If eternalism is true, then you are not writing your own fate, you are simply experiencing it. Your choices, your emotions, your sense of control may all be illusions designed to keep you from realizing the truth, that everything you will ever do has already been done. Yet, there is a strange comfort in this idea as well. If time is unchanging, then there is no true loss. The best moments of your life still exist, even if you cannot return to them. The people you love, the memories you cherish, are not erased. They are simply in a different part of the timeline, still there, still real. And perhaps, just as you long for the past, there's a version of you in the future, looking back at this very moment, wishing they could return to it. The block universe, the past, present, and future already exist. Imagine standing outside of time, gazing upon reality not as a fleeting experience, but as a frozen structure. Instead of a world that changes, moves, and evolves, you see everything at once, every event, every moment, from the beginning of time to the end, locked in place like an intricate sculpture. This is the haunting concept of the block universe theory, the idea that the past, present, and future are not flowing, but coexisting, equally real, permanently etched into the very fabric of existence. If this is true, then time is not something we move through. It is something that simply exists, unchanging, eternal, already complete. Think of a reel of film. Each individual frame captures a specific moment, frozen in time. When played in sequence, the illusion of motion is created. But the frames themselves do not move. They exist all at once, already recorded, unalterable. The block universe suggests that reality itself is just like that reel of film. Every moment, your birth, your first love, your greatest triumphs, your final breath, already exists. You only experience them in a linear sequence because that is how your mind processes reality. But in truth, the future is not something that will happen. It is something that already is. You simply have not reached that frame in the film of your existence yet. This idea is disturbing because it challenges everything we believe about choice, change, and free will. If the future already exists, does that mean your fate is sealed? If every decision you will ever make is already recorded in the fabric of time, then are you truly choosing? Or are you simply playing out a script that was written before you were even born? Imagine looking at your entire life from an external perspective, like a frozen timeline stretching from beginning to end. You would see every moment already there, waiting for you. But here's the question. If you could step outside of time and see your future self, could you change anything? Or would you realize that the version of you making the change has always existed? That you were always going to make that decision, that every choice you have ever made was inevitable? Now think about what this means for the past. If all moments exist at once, then the past is not truly gone. It is simply out of reach, like a page you have already read in a book. The child you once were is still there, frozen in time, existing just as vividly as you do now. Your happiest memories, your deepest regrets, your lost loved ones, they are not truly lost. They still exist, just as real as the present. You have simply moved forward in your perception. And what if, in some way, your consciousness could shift backward? If time is just a dimension, like space, then why should we only experience it in one direction? Why can't we turn around, retrace our steps, revisit moments we have already lived? Perhaps déjà vu is more than a trick of the brain. Perhaps it is a fleeting glimpse of the fact that your past is still there, waiting. The block universe suggests that nothing ever truly disappears. The version of you that is listening to this right now, in this moment, will always exist. You will always be here, in this exact place, experiencing this exact thought. Somewhere, you are still living your childhood. Somewhere, you are already living your final days. And somewhere beyond that, you exist outside of time, looking down upon the entire structure, realizing that nothing was ever truly lost, because nothing ever truly ends. The cyclical time hypothesis. Are we living the same life over and over? There is a theory, one that lingers on the edge of human understanding, that whispers of an eternal loop, a cycle in which time does not flow forward like a river, but instead turns back on itself like a great cosmic wheel. This is the cyclical time hypothesis, the idea that everything you have ever experienced, every moment of joy, every moment of pain, has happened before, and it will happen again, not once, not twice, but an infinite number of times. In this strange, haunting vision of reality, your life is not a straight line leading to an unknown future, but a closed loop, a never-ending repetition of events, forever trapped in the rhythms of an inescapable cycle. If true, then everything you are doing right now, listening to these words, thinking these thoughts, has already been done before, and will be done again, endlessly, across the corridors of eternity. Imagine waking up in the morning, feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin, stretching your body as you prepare for the day ahead. Now, picture that same moment repeating itself, not just tomorrow or next year, but in another version of reality, another cycle of existence where you wake up in the exact same way, feel the exact same warmth, stretch the exact same way, all without ever realizing that this has happened before. What if every choice you make, every word you speak, every thought you have, has already been played out in an infinite loop, destined to repeat forever? If true, this would mean that free will is nothing more than an illusion, that no matter what you do, you are simply acting out a script that has been written and performed countless times before. There are ancient philosophies that have long suggested time is not linear but cyclical. Hinduism speaks of vast cosmic cycles called kalpas, where the universe is born, destroyed, and reborn in an endless dance of creation. The Stoic philosophers of ancient Greece believed in eternal recurrence, the idea that the universe resets itself after a vast cosmic cycle, returning everything to its original state, forcing history to repeat itself with absolute precision. And then there was Friedrich Nietzsche, who once asked, "What if a demon were to tell you that you must live this life over and over, exactly as it is, without change? Would you embrace it, or would you despair? But if time truly loops, then how would we ever know?" The very nature of cyclical time suggests that our memories are reset with each repetition, that we are eternally blind to the truth of our existence. Right now, you might feel as though your life is unfolding in a unique and unpredictable way, but in reality, you may have already lived this moment infinite times before, and you may live it again infinite times to come. If you close your eyes and let your mind drift, you may even begin to wonder, have you heard these words before? Have you listened to this very thought experiment in another cycle, in another loop of time? If so, would you ever be able to tell? Some physicists and cosmologists have explored the idea that time itself may be an illusion. If the universe is truly governed by deterministic laws, then everything that has happened and will ever happen was already set in motion at the moment of the Big Bang. In this sense, time does not truly move forward. It merely exists, like an unchanging structure, a repeating pattern that never truly escapes itself. Some models of the universe even suggest that after trillions of years, once the cosmos has stretched itself to the limits of existence, it will collapse inward and give birth to a new universe, nearly identical to the last. If this is true, then everything, every star, every planet, every thought, every dream, has existed before in previous cycles of reality and will exist again in future ones. Consider the strange sensation of déjà vu, that fleeting feeling that you have lived this moment before. Science tells us it is merely a trick of the brain, a misfiring of neurons that creates the illusion of familiarity. But what if déjà vu is something more? What if, for the briefest of moments, your mind is peering through the cracks of time itself, glimpsing the infinite cycles of reality that have come before? Perhaps every dream you've ever had, every fleeting memory, that feels disconnected from your present life is nothing more than an echo from a previous loop, a past version of yourself trying to warn you, trying to remind you of something long forgotten. Imagine if, right now, in some other version of reality, another version of you is sitting in the exact same position, listening to the exact same words, feeling the exact same emotions. Would that version of you think they were unique? Would they believe they were experiencing this moment for the first time? And if time truly repeats forever, then does it even matter what choices you make? If your fate is already written in the fabric of the universe, if you are doomed to repeat this life endlessly, then what does that mean for the idea of change, of progress, of hope? There is something both terrifying and beautiful about the idea of an infinite cycle. On one hand, it suggests that nothing we do truly matters, because everything will simply play out the same way, over and over, with no escape. But on the other hand, it means that every beautiful moment, every act of love, every moment of laughter is not fleeting, it is eternal. The warmth of a sunrise, the feeling of holding someone's hand, the joy of a quiet evening, these things are not lost to time because they will always return, forever and ever, in an endless rhythm of existence. If the cyclical time hypothesis is true, then your life is not a journey toward an unknown future, but a song that has been playing since the beginning of time, one that will never end. And maybe, just maybe, that is not something to fear. Perhaps instead, it is something to embrace.